Welcome to the Breakneck Podcast. This week, as always, I'm with Matt. We are two founders running AI-centered startups, and we are navigating the world like everybody else in terms of AI. And we have these awesome conversations every week to share what we've learned, and we have guests join us sometimes. But this week, I'm going to hand it straight to Matt, because Matt, you've got something to say.
I have been having so many conversations over the last week, and I think we started out, we called the show Breakneck, and we were thinking of a name. We were like, what's something that's slightly unnerving? What's something that sounds dangerous? A friend of mine sent like one of those collars that you put on your neck. Like, getting your neck broken is probably one of the worst things that can happen to you. And I've had a lot of friends, as they start to see what we're seeing, people who aren't thinking about this every day, but they start to use it for a job function, and they buy the paid account and they're like, what? This is my whole job. This can all be done. I just want to comment on that phenomenon. This is an experiment. I want to talk about the words we use to describe how we feel, and be very specific with those words, because I think it's going to unleash and unlock something. And I want to this is what you do in cognitive behavioral therapy. You name your emotions, but you're very particular about it, because when you realize you're feeling something, you can feel really bad, or it can be very useful for you. And so I'll follow that kind of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, I think a lot of people are feeling fear, and we don't really have a good word for it. But I think what they need to start feeling is terror at AI. Sounds worse.
Okay.
Sounds worse. No, but let me, now that I hopefully have your attention, let's use Greek instead. Let's not have English words. Let's use Greek. We have phobias. We have things that we immediately recoil from. Like, my mom doesn't like heights. Some people don't like agoraphobia. They don't like to go outside. And the word I'm looking for in Greek is deinon, which you probably haven't heard. But
No, I have not, Matt.
it's the root
Educate
of
me.
dinosaur. And when I was a kid, they said, what is dinosaur? It's terror lizard, dinosaur. But really, the word deinon is used to describe something like terror, awe, wonder. And I think that's really where, when we're thinking about what's happening in AI, we need to focus on, is the terror that everything's at stake, but also the wonder at what's coming next. When we recoil from something or we avoid it, right? That's going to be negative. When we are engaged with it and we say, hey, this is something very big, something big is happening, I have no idea what's going to come next, I think that's the right emotion. And I'm using this as just like a touch point. Like, can we start to then stick with that feeling and saying, well, really what's been happening over the last many, many years is that we've gotten jobs. And those jobs have definitions and functions and software and all of these things that have become very static, very well sorted. And so we know, I'm going to have this job, and I'm going to do this thing and that thing, and I'm going to use these software, I'm going to make these clicks and so on. And we look at AI and we realize all of that's going to be replaced. And what's happened, and this is the thing I want us to have terror about, is that we started to identify ourselves with those job functions and that way of doing things. And that's made us pretty soft. And I think if we can engage with the terror and the wonder and the awe of what's happening to us, rather than being made redundant, no, your job function is being made redundant. You are going to be hopefully freed up to start really engaging with the world. And I think that's something that I've found lately, is that if you try to now say, hey, all the stuff I used to do, I was a data scientist. I look at anything I did in 2013, 2011, 2012, back then, automated instantly. I would not be employable. But I've now tried things that I tried back then that were almost impossible, and I can now engage with them and start to do new things. And I think if we engage with terror and let it take its power over us, then it's going to wake us up to a lot of new things that are possible. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that terror, awe, and wonder are three words you used. And you're 100% right. I call it hanging words on stuff. Like, we're hanging words, you hung great words on genuinely how I feel about it too. And I am hardwired to be curious. I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm always forward looking. And my wife is always present. She's awesome at that. I'm terrible at that. I'm always looking over the horizon. So I'm always trying to look over that hill to see what's going on. But I think it's the first time I've ever had a good dose of terror in the mix, right? I think the words you use there are really elegant. So what do we do with that?
I think it's waking up, really waking up what's possible. That every time you feel something important about yourself is going to become unnecessary, and that's going to happen. That's why I don't shy away from the word terror. We could focus on wonder and we could focus on awe and maybe these positive connotations. But there's going to be big things about you that don't matter anymore. For example, having a really good memory. I used to read like the Guinness Book of World Records. I have a lot of friends that, yeah, I've read the Guinness Book of World Records, that was, and you memorize all the facts. And if somebody in a bar, that's the idea of the Guinness Book of World. Who's the tallest man in the world? And you'd be like, oh, I know he's 7'7" and he's this and this. And of course, with the internet, none of that matters anymore. And we don't really, we're not really that sad about being bad at bar trivia or bar trivia not mattering anymore because we could just look everything up. But when it starts to encroach, and it's, steadily been doing that on, does it matter to be intelligent anymore?
Yeah.
Less. That's a big thing that I'm very concerned with myself. I've defined my ability to provide for my family and myself and have meaning in my life by, I'm intelligent, so that's going to keep me, ahead of things. But every time we lose something like that, start to think, well, what are we getting? And I think that terror can wake us up and force us to acknowledge that we're going to lose what's defined us and just come to terms with that, embrace it,
Yeah.
and then say, what's
Yeah, terror
next?
serves a purpose. I was thinking about it yesterday. I was a little bit tired yesterday and I was sort of a little bit more negative in my thoughts. And I just had this moment of curiosity of like, well, why am I like that? Well, it's because when you're tired, when stuff is tough, your brain reverts to, whoa, okay, I need to be on alert. I need to be thinking about this. And that maybe is the message one of the messages you're trying to convey here, that we're headed into a time of tremendous change. And you've outlined some of the ways in which it's going to change. Our identities might actually, how we identify ourselves might actually change. But it's serving the purpose of us going, whoa, 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 okay, you gotta wake up, you gotta listen, you gotta look. So I think that that's a really important thing to sort of assuage the terror just a little bit for people. I actually think in the long run, this is going to make us all more human. I think the less human things are going to be automated. They're going to be more efficient. The gluing ourselves to an office desk 5 days a week, I think we probably won't need to do. I think there'll be other ways to generate, I was going to say productivity, things of value that are of value to humans. So my prediction is that I think we'll be okay, but that's just one prediction of many. And I think I really like what you're saying. The terror, we need to sit in the terror a little bit to really ruminate, to think about it, to work out what it is. Do I need to change? Are there new skills I need? What about my kids? My kids are going to college, or they're in high school, or they're whatever. What are the things that they need to be thinking about? So I think you're right, but I am full of terror now that you've highlighted it.
Good. And just be terrified all the time. I mean, that's how Fox News gets viewers. That's how we're getting viewers. We are just going to put everyone on edge and say, only by listening to us, I'm only half joking. If we can get viewers that way, guys, it's coming for your jobs. Everything's going to change. You got to watch the show. There's a poem, well, it's Sophocles, and he wrote something called the Ode to Man. And the first line is very famous. It uses this word dino, all the cognates of it, but like, of all the terrible things in the world, and that's awe and wonder kind of meaning of the word terror, of all the terrible things in the world, man is the most terrible. And I think just, if there's anything to be afraid of, it's you. Get that energy back. Like be engaged with a world that's changing, but then also know that like all of these are just tools, and man with tools cleaves the waves and cuts the earth as we've always done. We are the most terrible thing in the world. There's nobody else. Like these AIs are not conscious. It's a change in tools. And if you think of yourself as this capable of being that, get your pride back, get on top of things. Like if the world is going to change, it is going to be people that change it still. These are just tools. They're just machines. You're still the most terrible thing of all, which if you hadn't listened to the previous part of this would be a weird thing to clip out. But yeah, you're terrifying.
Well, it's maybe said another way, honing in on the tools for a second. How long has the written word been around? I don't know exactly how long the written.
About 10,000 years. You had
Yeah.
about Mesopotamia. It's kind of like when the written word kind of got momentum, and
So
I'm sure.
we tend to assume that the tools that we have today, like my kids don't have any experience of the world prior to the internet, right? Prior to the iPad, prior to the smartphone, they tend to think that this is the way the world is, right? And so what we're dealing with now is a change of the way the world is today. But if you go back 20 years ago and somebody told you about an LLM, you'd be like, well, I don't like, so what that it can suck up all the words in the internet? I don't even know what the internet is, and I'm living just fine without the internet, right? So if you go back in time, then there wasn't TV, there wasn't the Industrial Revolution, there wasn't the written word. So there's a bunch of tools that we have that are just so ingrained in our daily life. We assume that to be human, we must have these things.
Hmm.
And that is not the case. Now, maybe we're headed to a reverse of that, where those tools become less relevant. They become abstracted, and we're left with the more human things, which in itself is a bit of a scary thought, right? If, what if I take your phone and your internet away from you? That's probably going to be scary. But we have this, I think I've said already, we have this time of change coming towards us, and we have, maybe what you're saying, Matt, is we have this work to do on ourselves and as society to work out what we're going to look like and how our identities are going to be.
Yeah, and just, I think this is a if you go read a book like on like I said, cognitive behavioral therapy, feeling good is a classic one. Describe the feeling you're having, and I think we are. I feel fearful, but I can make a choice over what I feel. I am going to feel terror. I'm going to feel this wake up call, and it's like I don't know about you, and you're an entrepreneur. This is not the life I felt I was meant to live. Is like managing emails and things like that. That's like a thing I need to do. I have to do emails. I have to do fundraising. Those are not my favorite things in the world. I like thinking about how the world should be and how we can make it the way it should be. Like I have my own opinion, but I felt pretty good about the companies I've done in the past, and I'm really happy with one of now. If we can accomplish our mission, then that's great. But again, I have started to identify with, well, I'm really good about scheduling events. My God, please get rid of that. Like there's very little. You said we're going to make ourselves more human. I think that's kind of a very loaded definition. Like we're defining the word as we're going on, but creating Python snippets, I was very good at that for a while, and it was remunerative, but is not something I want to hang my soul on. Like this is my purpose for life. There's big stuff to do, and we just forgot that we can change things. You go back to my hometown where I grew up, nothing's changed. 30, 40 years, just looks exactly the same. Not a single brick has moved. It feels like it's just everything's becoming frozen in time. And maybe we can wake up everybody to the fact that we do have creative capacity that we've just we traded for jobs that pay more than our.
So what guidance might you give to, we'll take somebody in your hometown as an exemplar of somebody who's not in the midst of it like us, right? If somebody said, oh, this AI thing, oh my God, I'm frightened. What guidance would you give?
When I left my hometown, I always kind of prided myself that I was much better at math than everyone else. Like that was like my why do I deserve to leave and become successful like I want to be? Like, I'm good at math, so that'll work. Some version of that. Not everybody's good at math. Like I think people really need to go and start. A lot of people who consider themselves non-technical, you can go write code now, right now. Just I have a close person close to me who had a project. They were going to hire an intern for the summer. She did it in an afternoon. The whole summer's worth of work with an AI. It wrote a script and it just cranked through it. Like, just go play with things. Just stop assuming that you're going to fail. And again, most people don't want to go try new things and don't want to put them in a situation where they haven't done it before and they might fail. They might look foolish. Well, use the fact that everything you do now is going to be replaced probably as well. So get terrified. I think that's the thing, is that you do need to now start playing with the new world. My friend B, he's doing a course and he said, like, it's not that writing is going to end, because you can, of course, write using AI, and you could write stuff up to the standard of 10 years ago with AI pretty well in a way that's pretty undistinguishable. Well, now the standards are going to change. So go try to write bigger things, harder things, clearer things, write things that haven't been written, write in ways that have not been done before, but you got to engage with it still. You can't just throw up your hands and say, well, the way I was taught in school is no longer relevant, but you did learn it and you are engaged with it. Now go push it to the next limit. And I think there's going to be many, many more people, to your point about my hometown, there's going to be many, many more people now who can push the frontier, but they're not going to do it if they just assume like, well, I did what I was supposed to do. It's like, no, you have to be scared that the things you're supposed to do are no longer going to matter.
So have we been through a period? There's a phrase, and I'm going to get it wrong, right? It's like hard times make hard men make soft times make soft men, something to that
That's
effect.
the wheel of yeah.
Yeah. So we're coming. Are we coming out of a soft time? Please tell me, Matt, we're hard men.
No, I'm not. I'm a soft person, but I don't think that's the right cycle. I don't believe in this. I mean, it's a lot of fascists who use that quote. No offense. Really, what happens is the world is constantly being renewed, and every so often there is a new world, which is new things that we can do, new things that we're going to consider important. And I personally find it quite nice that the, ultimate achievement of humanity is not to like fight a battle anymore. In fact, battles are meaningless. All these people are like, oh, we should let the war in Ukraine play out, or we should be in war all the time so we can prove ourselves. It's like, no, we have nukes now. Nukes are a very hard weapon. There's no way to fight a war in the shadow of a nuclear bomb that's meaningful. So we do something else. Like we don't just go out and fight pointless battles like the Russians right now. Like just fighting to stop it. It's not proving anything. It's not doing anything because we all know that push comes to shove. The only thing will happen if we really fought a war would be instantaneous annihilation. It's just not there anymore. It's not hard to fight a war anymore. There's no possibility of meaningfully being a heroic soldier in the same way there was in like, I don't know, the 1600s or the more like the early 1800s. Like that's the super heroic, 7 Years War kind of like really cool outfits and stuff. And I think similarly, it's like being a person who could go out and do, a whole bunch of arithmetic with a slide rule and like, send a man to the moon. It doesn't make sense anymore, but there's something new coming and none of us are prepared for it because I was told my whole life that I was like, or at least considered myself like, no, I'm edgy. I've not fallen asleep with all these old styles, and I'm actually thinking of what's coming and what's new. And I've had this narrative in my mind that I'm a person who's on the cutting edge of things. And now I find that the cutting edge is far beyond me. I don't understand youth culture. I don't like their music. And I never thought that would happen. And I think the pace of change, I think this is not just that normal, steady generational drift where things kind of move away from us. And if you're not paying attention, what's happening is it's not a shift. It's a huge jerk to this huge transition. Things are going to move very far, very quickly. And we need to really center ourselves on, we got to chase it. We got to go figure out what's relevant now. And it's not the old things.
Yeah. So we talked way back when on episodes about return on intelligence. And I think what we're seeing is a shift away from, and prior to that, it might have been return on knowledge, I'm not sure, but return on intelligence. And now I think we're seeing return on attention is a big thing, right? And so if you were to guess, what do you think the next highest return on X, what will that X be?
I don't have a grounded opinion on this, but I will give you my intuition, which is the computers are bad at staying aligned with a goal right now. They talk about how many hours something can work. And it generally, human beings, because we are so deeply embedded into the culture, that's where our grounding is. Like we are social linguistic beings that understand power and reputation and how the world works in a very deep way that the computers don't. They understand things about the world we don't, but we understand this kind of like what is happening. We're just, and it's not a unique skill. It's just called being normal. It's just about being a person. And generally that is the thing we're bringing to AI when it's a most successful contribution. You have a human in the loop who keeps it pointed in the right direction based off of our very long-standing we're born into it. Like we never understood we learned these things, but it's just being a human being. And so it's like the return to vision, the return to integrity is going to, I think, continue to be high. And I don't think the computers are going to catch up with them as quickly as they have been on intelligence because it's so contextual, it's so contingent, and it involves making choices and owning things. And I think when you talk about the returns, like, it's like more being human, I think that's a really good far out telos of the whole thing. The end point of the whole operation is that eventually being human, the way we understand it, well, that'll be the only thing. I think there will just be these returns to being someone who understands what it is to be human. And if we're going to keep AI aligned, like that will continue to be our jobs. And then of course, but that's once we get there, there'll be all these little things, which is I'm a person who's capable of understanding, the evals and whether things are completing successfully, of forming networks of people. I don't know, but I think there'll just be a understanding what it is to be human is going to continue to just be a very high value thing. And so the more that we make ourselves inhuman and say, no, I'm just an email monkey or I'm just a coder, will be less and less valuable over time. You have to really get back to like, what are we trying to do as a species? That has been a question we haven't asked ourselves very
Yeah,
often.
and you
Like,
kind of nailed it there for me. We have spent the last, when's the Industrial Revolution started? 1800s-ish, was it? I can't remember. But
these 1850s kind of era.
so we spent the last 200 years, started with putting ourselves kind of in production lines and all going to cities and living in these blocks of repetitive shaped buildings to do this job that everybody needed to repeat. Our new age version of that is much more sophisticated. We lock ourselves to a desk in a room in our house for X number of hours. I think a bunch of that stuff, as I said, will kind of disappear. And that to me is so inhuman, right? We're not designed to do the same thing constantly. So if I'm to maybe wrap this up in a more optimistic view, I think you're right, Matt. We all have a job to do, which is to start learning this stuff and understanding it and get on the road to learning. I am optimistic about it. The primary reason I'm optimistic is this is not happening quite as quickly as I think the media would have you, and people maybe would tend to think. I think it's going to be 3, 4, 5 years. It's a cultural shift that will need to happen. 5 years is plenty of time for a cultural shift, I think, to happen. So in that sense, I think we're good. You are going to get left behind if you don't start thinking about it. Who was it? The Fiverr CEO said this week. He said, it is coming for your job. It's coming for my
Well, yeah,
job
I saw
too. We
that.
all have an obligation to, if we want to have our job, and he even said not to have your current job, but to have a job, you got to start doing work on this. You got to start working out what it is, what it means for you. So, any other wrapping up comments before we pass on to our usual question?
No, I think we covered the whole thing. I'm having a great week myself personally. I had a great Mother's Day. You can be terrified and have a great time. It's like an amusement park. I don't think it's a necessarily negative thing. And I always like taking time with you because it really forces you to confront like this is happening. We're not going to vote for it. It's just going to happen. It's going to go.
Yeah, I do want to say there's one other, there's a question of, I had a question getting involved in this, whether this is where I wanted to spend my time because it's going to take people's jobs, and it is going to take people's jobs. And you have a decision like, what am I going to do with this finite amount of time and effort that I actually have? And the conclusion that I came to was, when I understood it better, it's going to be good. There are going to be things that are positive, very positive out of this. And whether I get involved or not, it's still going to happen anyway. So I would prefer people like you and me who are actually thinking about this stuff and trying to understand the broader impact to be steering the ship to the extent that we actually steer the ship.
To that point, there's a lot of people, I see posts all the time like, hey, no one's hiring young developers anymore. And it's same thing in like maybe in the banks, like they're not hiring young people anymore because they don't need people for these decks and they have to cut costs. And so they're cutting off that initial pipeline. And it's just like, that can be very scary. That can appear doom, but it's like, no. That's a huge opportunity. There's a lot of very young people right now who aren't great senior coders, but guess what? You don't need to be anymore. What are we going to do with them? Like how, I mean, they're going to figure something to do with themselves. I'm sure. I mean, they don't need old people, but if you're old and you can come up with something, over 35, and you can come up with something based on your experience to say, hey, how are we going to put those people to work? It can be explosive. Just if the old thing's going away, it presents brand new opportunities. If you could go figure out how to take 22-year-olds straight out of school and make them very successful with AI, you can go build an enormous business right now, or you can build an enormous movement.
Yeah, I think genuinely that's been on my mind. If you can create an on-ramp for folks, and just to this is the way I think a little bit about it. My dad's an engineer as well. We all learned Fortran. He did it on punch cards. If anybody doesn't knows what they are, look them up. I don't think I've ever even seen one. I learned it on what was it called? A CMS terminal? It wasn't CMS, something else. But anyway, so I never did punch cards. But imagine somebody saying, we're getting rid of punch cards, so we don't need junior developers anymore to do the punch cards. Like, no, that didn't make any sense. The junior developers didn't need to know, but punch cards, they went straight to a keyboard. And that is really kind of the way I think about it. And there is, by the way, there's a bunch of upset, disenfranchised Ivy League computer science grads right now who don't have jobs. It doesn't make them not smart. It makes them still very, very smart. there's a bunch of those folks out there. If you can find an easy way to on-ramp them using AI to deliver value and harness their brains to deliver great things, you're going to have competitive advantage.
The earlier you accept that this is happening, though, the more of that those low-hanging opportunities will be there. Anyway, let's land it.
Yeah, well, we don't get to land it just yet. You got to answer my weekly question. Have you got anything for me? What have you spotted this week?
Pass.
Pass.
I don't remember what happened last week at all. I have no
Okay.
recollection since the last time I met with you of really anything that's happened.
All right. Well, I'm going to pass in a way. I'm going to invite people to go to our LinkedIn page this week. I will give you a hint. If you've been listening to me at all lately, the sort of visual advancements and progression are really interesting to me, and we're going to share with you something interesting on that front. So go to our Breakneck podcast on LinkedIn. You will see something interesting, which is a thing that caught my attention this week.
We'll leave it as an exercise for the reader. Ian, great talking to you again.
Likewise, Matt. Let's land it there.
See you next week.
See ya.